In this video, we will review the overhaul procedures for the Vanguard Supreme 4SJ4 HACI2 circular knitting machine with Filter Flow 2000. Following these steps carefully will extend the life of the machine, make it operate more efficiently, and produce better quality fabric. Before we begin, let's talk about safety. Carefully read and understand the safety notice before beginning any overhaul, maintenance, or repair activity. It is always important to use the right tool for the job. You can get a list of tools necessary for maintaining your machine from the Vanguard Supreme Field Service Department. Let's get started. First, turn off the main power switch on the machine. Then, lock out the main power switch. If possible, disconnect or lock out the electrical supply to the machine. Now, remove the filter flow chamber covers. Disconnect the air lines and oil lines for the sinker dial. Loosen the screws securing the filter flow top covers and remove the top covers. Release the belt tensioner spring knobs. Loosen the belt tensioner screws and relieve the tension on the feeder drive belts. Next, remove the feeder drive belts from the quality wheels. When this is complete, the feeders will spin freely. Remove the screws and washers securing the carrier ring. Once they are removed, insert them loosely into the holes on the top side of the carrier ring. Remove the carrier ring shims and place them on top of the carrier ring also. Attach support chains with S-hooks to the A-frame assembly. If chains are not available, use cloth or metal hooks strong enough to support the weight of the carrier ring. With help from another person, raise the carrier ring to a workable level and secure it to the A-frame assembly with the chains and S-hooks. Do not attempt to raise the carrier ring alone. Break all the ends of yarn at the needles and wrap them around the center shaft. Using the ratchet handle, rotate the machine to drop out the fabric. Loosen the screws securing the sinker section blocks and remove the blocks. Disconnect the air lines and oil lines for the cylinder. Loosen the screws securing the cylinder section blocks and remove the blocks. Clean the cylinder section blocks thoroughly and inspect the cams for wear or damage. Replace worn or damaged cams as needed. Also, clean the sinker section blocks and inspect the cams thoroughly. If you see any wear or damage, replace the cams as needed. Remove the sinkers. Then remove the needles. Now remove the needle springs. Remember, you must wear safety glasses during this step. These springs can cause serious injury to the eyes if they suddenly come loose. Rotate the needle springs so the end hooks are visible. Use a needle pick to separate the springs from the cylinder. Firmly hold the springs in both hands and separate the end hooks. Carefully release the tension on the cylinder springs and remove them. Using compressed air, clean all debris from the cylinder slots and the sinker dial slots. Again, it is critical that you wear safety glasses for this step. Next, inspect the slots for damage or wear. Replace the cylinder and sinker dial if wear is visible. The following assembly steps refer to the correct indication points and measurements used when assembling the machine. These dimensions and the maximum allowable deviations are on the settings drawings supplied with your machine. In all cases, the closer the indication point is to 0, the more accurate the indication. For copies of the settings drawing, contact the Vanguard Supreme Field Service Department. Using a dial face indicator, check the cylinder for roundness. Adjust the cylinder as necessary. Then check the cylinder for flatness. Shim the cylinder as necessary. Using a dial face indicator, check the sinker dial for roundness. Next, check the sinker dial for flatness. While you're doing this, record the highest point of the sinker dial by marking an X on the inside of the cylinder. You will use this mark later to set the sinker cam clearance. If the sinker dial flatness does not fall within the tolerance shown on the settings drawing and the cylinder is flat, contact Vanguard Supreme for assistance. Loosen the screws on the sinker post securing the sinker cam retaining ring. Using a test dial indicator, check the sinker cam retaining ring for concentricity using the outside diameter. Adjust the concentricity of the sinker cam retaining ring with the set screws in the adjusting shoes. Do not over-tighten the set screws. This can deform the sinker cam retaining ring and cause knitting problems. Next, tighten the screws securing the sinker cam retaining ring to the sinker post. Install new sinkers. Old sinkers can be reused only after they have been thoroughly cleaned and inspected for damage and wear. Inspect the sinker section blocks to ensure they are free of lint and debris. Then assemble the sinker section blocks and tighten the screws securely. Using the ratchet handle, rotate the high point of the sinker dial until it is at sinker post number 1. This is the sinker post to the right of sinker section block number 1. Remove the sinker section block mounted to the right of sinker post number 1. This section block number will vary with the machine diameter. Using a feeler gauge, check the clearance between the sinker cams and the top of the sinkers. Place the feeler gauge between the nose and butt of the sinker. The proper sinker cam clearance is 7 1/1000ths to 9 1/1000ths of an inch, or 18 100ths to 23 100ths of a millimeter. To achieve the proper clearance, add or remove shims between the sinker post and the sinker cam retaining ring. Loosen the screw securing the sinker cam retaining ring to the sinker post where the clearance needs to be adjusted. Remove all shims at this location. Next, add or remove shims to the stack as needed to achieve the proper clearance. Slide the stack of shims between the sinker post and the sinker cam retaining ring. Tighten the screw securing the cam retaining ring to the sinker post. Then recheck for the proper clearance. Replace the sinker section block and tighten the screws securely. Using the ratchet handle, rotate the high point of the sinker dial to the remaining sinker posts and repeat the steps to achieve the proper sinker cam clearance. Next, set the sinker cam push. Loosen the screws securing sinker section block number 1 and remove the block. Using a dial caliper, set the first sinker cam on sinker section block number 1 to 465 1/1000ths to 475 1/1000ths of an inch, or 11 81 100ths to 12 6 100ths of a millimeter. This is the distance from the front left flat area on the sinker cam and the front lip of the section block. Loosen the cam screws slightly to allow for movement of the cam. Adjust the sinker cam to the proper setting and tighten the cam screws securely. Always double-check your setting to make sure the dial caliper was aligned properly. Install sinker section block number 1 and tighten the screws securely. Mount a magnetic indicator on the inside of the cylinder to the right of sinker section block number 1. Align the tip of the dial indicator to touch the nose of a sinker. If you're working on a fine cut machine, you may need to remove a sinker on either side of the sinker the dial indicator tip is in contact with. Using the ratchet handle, rotate the machine so the sinker in contact with the dial indicator tip is at the farthest point of push on the sinker cam that was set using the dial caliper. Set the indicator dial to 0. Using the ratchet handle, rotate the indicator and sinker to the farthest point on the next sinker cam. Adjust the sinker cam so the dial indicator reads 0. Repeat this process for each sinker cam. After setting all the sinker cams, rotate the sinker and the indicator back to the farthest point of push on the first sinker cam set. If the dial indicator does not read 0, repeat the process to set the sinker cams again. Wrap the cylinder springs around the cylinder and attach the end hooks. Make sure the springs are correctly positioned in the recessed area of the cylinder and the attached ends are offset from each other. Remember, It's critical to wear safety glasses whenever you're handling the cylinder springs. Install new needles. Old needles can be reused only after they have been thoroughly cleaned and inspected for damage and wear. Align the needle butts to the height of the cam tracks on the cylinder section blocks. Lower a group of needles as wide as a cylinder section block so the butts are below the cams. Inspect the cylinder section blocks to ensure they are free of lint and debris. Insert a cylinder section block into the opening in the needles and, with light pressure, slide the block to the right until it is in the proper position. Securely tighten the section block screws. Using a feeler gauge, check the clearance between the cylinder and the cylinder cams. The proper clearance is 4 1/1000ths to 12 1/1000ths of an inch or 10 100ths to 30 100ths of a millimeter. Repeat this procedure for the remaining section blocks. With help from another person, support the carrier ring and remove the chains holding it to the A-frame assembly. Lower the carrier ring into position. Do not attempt to lower the carrier ring alone. Rotate the carrier ring to align the left edges of the yarn carriers to the needle with the latch clearing the knitting or fabric line. Be sure to inspect the yarn carriers for wear at the yarn holes and replace them as needed. Install the shims and screws. Reconnect the air lines and oil lines. Using a 20/1000th of an inch cylinder shim, set the yarn carriers off the sinkers and needles. The yarn must be positioned so it is across the open latches and just brushes the front of the needle hooks to open any closed latches. Loop yarn onto the needles. Replace the feeder drive belts on the quality wheels. Apply tension to the feeder drive belts. Tighten the belt tensioner release screws. Then set the belt tension spring knobs. If you disconnected the electrical supply to the machine, reconnect it now. Unlock the main power switch and turn on the machine power. Always review and complete the safety checklist before operating the machine. Using the ratchet handle, knit the machine by hand until all ends of yarn have been picked up. Then, knit down the machine. Allow the machine to run until it reaches standard operating temperature. Using a yarn tension meter, set the yarn tension to 7 grams to 9 grams. Do this at both the low speed and high speed settings. Yarn tension will vary with machine speed and operating temperatures. It's important to keep a minimum of 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters of yarn wrapped around the yarn feeders. Always recheck the yarn tension after the machine reaches the final speed and temperature. Reinstall the filter flow top covers. Then, reinstall the filter flow chamber covers. Check the take-up cloth tension with your hand. Medium to light tension is best during high-speed operation. This will prevent excessive wear of the knitting elements. If the tension is either too high or too low, you will need to make adjustments. To decrease the cloth tension between the take-up top rollers and the knitting elements, decrease the diameter of the lower take-up quality wheel. In equal increments, increase the diameter of the upper take-up quality wheel. To increase the cloth tension between the take-up top rollers and the knitting elements, increase the diameter of the lower quality wheel. And in equal increments, decrease the diameter of the upper quality wheel. If you don't use the scales on the quality wheels to make adjustments in equal increments, the belt will slip and cause uneven cloth tension and excessive belt wear. Always recheck the cloth tension after adjustments have been made. When the machine is back in production, it must be flushed with needle oil every 4 hours for the first 24 hours of operation. You can do this manually or use the auto flush option if available. Stop the flushing process after the first 24 hours. If this flush schedule is not followed closely, the knitting elements will be severely damaged. Be sure to follow the procedures listed in the FilterFlow 2000 checklist for mechanics. Thank you for watching this video outlining the overhaul procedure for the Vanguard Supreme 4SJ4 HACI2 with FilterFlow 2000. With proper maintenance, this machine will give you years of exceptional service. If you have any questions about the procedures you have just seen, you may watch it again or contact the Vanguard Supreme Field Service Department for assistance.